All right, so here we are. Congratulations for starting the journey. I am so excited about this partnership. This is a partnership. I am your coach, and my desire is that you take action, and by the end of this, you will be one step closer to achieving your dreams, and you'll have the skills and the mindsets and the practices to even go one step further to slapping a booster rocket on those dreams. So I want to get started with an overview of the week, and I'll do this for most of the videos. We'll do that at the very beginning. In this first week, we're going to be focused on the mindsets for a success-driven life with great relationships. We're going to talk about getting started and how we get going. We're going to really move on focusing on the aha moments. I believe that in this first week, some real light bulbs are going to go off for you. We're going to think different, act different. We're going to be bolder. I definitely hope we're going to be dashing some of those limiting beliefs. We're going to be focusing on communication, which of course is really critical and how we can be better communicators. And we're going to have some bonus content about how to do all of this in a digital world that we're actually living in today. Today, our major focus is that overwhelming focus of the power of relationships and the power of the question who, not just what, not just where you're going, not how you're going to get there. But remember this. Success in life equals the people that you meet and what you create with them, what you co-create with them. I've always believed that relationships are the core to your success. Relational and collaborative sciences are something that I've been studying for so many years because it's so underattended, and I want us to really hammer home that this is going to be your booster shot for your success. Success is defined by you, of course, not me. So I would like you to start thinking about we talked about the why in our warm-up, but now we're going to be talking more specifically in more detail about the who. I want you to think about why you're doing this for a moment. I don't define your success, you define your success, right? So this is in your hands. You can be focused again on entrepreneur opportunities. You can be focused on your career and your career advancement. Look, I really hope you focus as well on nonprofits and things that you may be doing to really change the world around you, or even just learning something new. Frankly, you can even focus this on health. One of the things I've learned from some of my friends, like Dr. Oz in the United States, is that the people we hang out with, our friends, is who we become. Our health is predisposed to the relationships we have. On a personal basis, and you'll hear me referring to this periodically, I have focused the relationship mindset on my family and on my children. I have used a tribe of individuals working together to advance the growth of my own two boys, my foster children. Just remember that. Poverty and lack of opportunity is not the lack of money. It's not that. It's actually the lack of relationships. Look, let me tell you a story of a young man that breaks my heart. His name is George. George I met when he was in foster care. And this is a young man who I have been mentoring for some time. Now, a lot of the individuals that I meet embrace my learning right away, and others, of course, for whatever reason, don't take to it so fast. And this is an individual who hasn't. This individual, George, has not been able to see that his background could be fundamentally changed by his embracing people in a different way. As a result, George has continued to push people away from him. George has isolated himself. George believes that he's got to do everything himself, but he feels that he doesn't have the resources. He feels that he doesn't have the access. He feels that he is not able to make it in this world because he doesn't have the opportunities that other people have. What he doesn't realize is that they're sitting around him in the people that he could be building relationships with. And it's deeply sad to me because George today is relatively underemployed and very often unemployed. George today has struggle and a lack of joy in his life and depression because George doesn't feel that anybody cares. But the reality is people could and people would, but people don't because he's not activating those relationships. We've all been in positions where we have felt alone, but in this position, you've got to recognize that it's your responsibility to not be alone, to move from that lonely state, that isolated state, the I've got to do it myself state, and move into a state of I can and I will do extraordinary things with and through other individuals. But that's a choice. And it's a choice that George has not been willing to make. And it kills me that George has not been willing to make it. And it kills me that I see individuals making small George choices in their life all the time. And I don't want that to you. It makes me so sad. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're at that level, but I am suggesting that we can all fall into elements of that. Please, 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 don't opt out of what's possible for you. All of us could have been George. Look, based on the resources that I had available to me, I could have been George. But I wasn't. I learned to create a different life for myself. You know, there's this word called nepotism. Nepotism is when your family or your parents particularly give you things because you're their children. And a lot of us who didn't have rich families, powerful families, we get anxiety-ridden, maybe even angry or resentful of individuals who are handed things on a silver platter. But you have to recognize you can have things handed to you on a silver platter if you have the relationships. You don't have to be born into the relationships. You don't have to be born into the relationships. You have to create them. And the strength of a paternal relationship, of course, and a maternal relationship is so strong, but you can create the strength of those relationships around you. I'd like to take you through my period of time in my life and give you my backstory. And what I thought about in preparation for this class is, where were the times in my life that critical relationships acted as a massive booster shot to where I was? I mentioned to you I was born into a very poor immigrant Italian family. My father was economically disadvantaged and unemployed a lot of the times when I was growing up. He busted his back end to make sure that his family had the best thing he could possibly have. And he saw a private elementary school out there. And he said, I wanted my son to get into that school. Well, he didn't have the money to do it. But it was interesting. An individual who was the CEO of the company that he worked for, he was the lowest level of the company that he worked for. He was driving a tow motor in a steel mill. And the CEO of that company was somebody that my father went and got an appointment at a lunch break with that individual. And he said to that individual, excuse me, sir, look at my hands. I can't ever get them clean. I don't want my son to have to work that hard. He's a smart kid. I hear that you're on the board of a small private school. Can you meet my son and get him into this school? And that gentleman, Mr. McKenna, was amazing. He met with me. And then he introduced me to the headmaster of that school, Mr. Messer. And in 5th grade, as a little kid, I all of a sudden had education opened up to me that I wouldn't have had otherwise, because my father had the audacity to open up a door that wasn't available to poor people, but was available because he asked and he had the relationship. My dad used to say to me, and I'm going to talk about this later, don't ever be afraid to ask. The worst anybody could ever say is no. I will reinforce that with you along the way. And then when I went and worked myself, when I was 11 years old and I was working at a golf course, right? I was working at a golf course, and what I saw was how all the rich people helped each other. And I realized that I myself could build relationships with those golfers. And the same things that were available to those golfers' children could be available to me. I had 4 hours of conversation time, appropriate conversation time, on that course with those rich golfers. And if I realized that if I built a decent relationship by being of service to those individuals, right, that I could have access to the same things that they were giving as nepotistic favors to their children and to other people's children. When I went to Yale, there was a professor there who opened up an entirely new world to me. His name was Duncan. He was into business, and I didn't know anything about business. I wanted to be a politician at the time. I wanted to go back and help my state of Pennsylvania and fix the problems that were going on with all the unemployment. But Duncan made me recognize that business was perhaps an opportunity for me, that I could help people, even more perhaps than politics at the time. So I moved from politics onto business, and then I went into business. I was the only person to go into manufacturing because I wanted to go back and fix manufacturing in Pennsylvania. And I met a gentleman by the name of Bob Norris. And Bob Norris opened up a world to me of understanding. It was something called total quality management. It doesn't matter, but the point of it was it helped me understand that workers coming together could solve their own problems. And that put a real light bulb off for me, which is that it's people working with people that transform people around them and transform outcomes. I could keep going through. It was actually individuals. When I was getting ready to go to Harvard Business School now, right? Harvard Business School. I couldn't afford it. And it was some people that I met along the way, some people that I met that lent me money and allowed me to go to Harvard Business School. And some of them told me that in the future, they don't even want me to pay back. They just want me to pay back with my gifts into society, which really made me sit here and realize that my job was to make the biggest imprint on this world that I possibly could because of the gifts that have been given to me by the people that have given them to me. Keep going down the list. When I went to Deloitte, it was actually a gentleman by the name of Greg Seal that allowed me to get close to a gentleman by the name of Pat LeConto, who was our CEO. I was nowhere. I was at the lowest level of the organization, but because of those relationships, I was able to serve those individuals and become the youngest chief marketing officer in that organization. And then even though I was a chief marketing officer there, I could have never had access to a firm as extraordinary as Starwood Hotels if it wasn't for Tad Smith. Tad Smith today is a great businessman, but Tad Smith at the time was working inside of Starwood Hotels, and he was the individual, not the headhunters, not the traditional mediums. It was a person, Tad Smith, that opened up the door and invited me into Starwood to meet the extraordinary Barry Sternlicht, who was the CEO of the company. I keep going through this with you, and even today, this very day that we're speaking today, right? My clients, I can think of names early on at Farazi Greenlight. Mike Manassi. Mike Manassi helped Farazi Greenlight get on its 2 feet from the very beginning. In times that we struggled early in the company's creation, Mike Manassi supported us. I think today as well, there's a gentleman by the name of Pierre Olivier. Pierre Olivier, I'm humbled by how Pierre has stepped into my life. And he has said to me, Keith, your marketing and the way in which you're taking the extraordinary work that you're doing isn't strong enough, and I would like to help you. And this is an individual who was a former GM of Rolls-Royce and is volunteering and giving time to help me extend my mission to people like you and large organizations around the world. Listen, it's all about people. I didn't show up here and be successful for any other reason other than people. I've walked through and I am so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I don't spend enough time being grateful, but in the preparation of this course, I'm humbled to realize how many people have been there for me. We're gonna learn today, and as we go forward, how you can do that too. I want to connect you to your success, and I want you to connect people to how you've been successful. So here's what you do. I want you to reflect retrospectively. I want you to reflect back on your life. Who were your individuals? Like I've just listed all of these names of people who helped me. I want you to think, who are the people that helped you? At any point in your life, I want you to write those names down, please. Write those names down. Don't be like George. George thinks nobody's helped him, and that's totally not true. George is isolating himself and thinking that nobody wants to be there, and he doesn't see how extraordinary people have been for him, right? I want you to think of all the people that have helped you. And don't give me any BS that nobody has. Of course they have. Now, write those names down. Now, the first thing I want you to do after having written those names down is I want you to be grateful. I want you to bask in the gratitude that you have for those individuals as I get emotional thinking about the people that have helped me. I would like you to reflect for a moment and think about the people that have helped you and be grateful. And now, I want you to either share that story with someone in your tribe, some friend of yours, or even better, I want you to reach out and call that person. I want you to send an email to that person. I want you to say to that individual how grateful you are to them. Go on and talk to your tribe about your gratitude. I want you all to understand how powerful people have already shown up for you, right? I want you to coach each other. If people are feeling a little isolated and feeling that they might not have had that, then I want you to help them, prop them up and recognize and coach them into understanding that people have been there for them. And ideally even reach out and share some of that gratitude with those amazing people. I'm gonna make some phone calls today just as a result of this as well. So get out there, share that appreciation, and I will see you tomorrow.